Good evening. Welcome to Urban Facts. I'm your host, Mr. Amen Hotep Parker. Um, Today we have the pleasure of interviewing a distinguished woman in education. She is the CEO of Global Leadership, no other than Miss Dr. Tamika Evans. So that's just Dr. Tamika Evans. There's no miss. Um, so we'll be talking with Dr. Evans today in regards to child, the environment of a child. Um, Before I get into all that, let's do a word of prayer. So, Father God, I thank you for this evening. Father, I definitely thank you for this foundation. I thank you for the people that have touched it and donated towards it. The wisdom that was given to me from other folks, the hands that have labored for these children and individuals in the community. And Father, I just thank you for your wisdom and entrusting me to lead these individuals and helping children in the inner city. In your most holy name I pray. Amen. So I want to thank our sponsors. So we want to thank Bethana. It's a community center, 2501 Reed Street. I want to thank the Cultural Exchange. They provided some money for the foundation too. DocuCare, they did some copies for us. Foods from Heaven is a catering service. Girls Who Brunch Tour. That's a tour by Dr. Nicola Mitchell. She goes around the nation, around the country, and promotes this tour in regards to empowerment of Black young women. Lighthouse Church International, Scoop USA Media, Telly's Glam, and the Philadelphia Kappa Silhouettes. That is, I believe that's a sorority. I'm not quite sure. Somebody will correct me in an email or comment or something like that, I'm sure. So, the biggest news for today is, unfortunately, Canada is still having fires, so the air is a little polluted. Please be safe in regards to going outside. Put the mask back on again. If you don't want any pollutants going into your system. So, like I said, we'll be talking about the child environment. So, what is environment for a child? The environment for the child is an enriching and stimulating home environment, fosters healthy growth and brain development, excuse me, by providing a child with love, emotional support, and opportunities for learning and exploration. In families where only one parent is present, there are often fewer economic and emotional resources. Now, that doesn't mean that the environment isn't as suitable as a two-parent home. It just means that, they may not bring in, as much money. And it's just, one parent. So obviously it ain't that much emotional support versus two parents. So that's just simple math. Here's something else too. Let's look at this here. So who remembers Tarzan? The ape man. We had that show, used to come on channel 17. So a child's environment can be either good or bad for their development. Remember, Tarzan's environment was of apes. He believed he was an ape when he became a man. Now, why am I saying all this? The environment of the child affects their development. So where this child is nurtured at, you know, that has a big impact on how they're developed as a person. Um, the reason for this video, as I explained to Dr. Evans and Dr. Michelle Evans, is that on my journeys to do Uber one night, come across a post that Michelle put up, Tamika, I'm sorry, and her son just won Heritage Award. So I was immediately enlightened by the whole situation. And then I was saddened by the whole situation because I said, opposed to me turning on the news and seeing children killing each other, now every child don't need to win the Heritage Award or even capable of doing so, but it should be more kids doing positive things opposed to standing in front of a judge or being handcuffed and shackled into CFCF. So let's just look at what bad child environment does, what it looks like. So now this is a real deal situation. I've actually seen this before. I've went into someone's home and the parents was drinking and smoking while excuse me, the child was sitting right there. Now you may be saying, well, he ain't even paying attention. He's acting like he's not paying attention. The child is nowhere in the world can't see that. But due to he might be traumatized or something. But due to what's happening, he's not going to question his parents. And matter of fact, it may be normal. I'm pretty sure that's not the first time that happened. So it's this run of the mill type of thing. Now here's another environment. Now that's Tamika, Dr. Evans, and AJ. I think that's his signing day, I believe it is. And this is a positive environment. Let me just blow this up a little bit. There's nothing real negative happening right here. If anything, it seems like it's everything positive. We got the young lady with the Penn State t-shirt on. We got Tamika. We got Alfonso. We got AJ. And they're supporting that child in regards to the accomplishments that he's done in life. One of many. We're going to bring on Tamika or Dr. Evans so she can further enlighten us in regards to the child's environment. So without further ado, I introduce to some and present to others Dr. Tamika Evans. Dr. Evans, how you doing, Doc?
Good evening. How are you? It's awesome to be on this evening. So thank you for the invitation.
Hey, no problem, no problem. Now, I ain't mean to embarrass y'all. I hope y'all had on the right clothes that everybody seen that.
Yes.
Tell Doc don't call me talk about why you show me with that shirt. So can you enlighten us a little bit on your perspective of environment in regards to a child? So just based off the question, how does the environment affect the development of a child?
I think that environment is everything. I do think that it is a part of what actually helps to create what type of child you're going to have. Your environment includes your home. It also includes your neighborhood. It includes the village. It includes the schools they go to. Everything, I believe, definitely affects how a child will actually grow up and the things that they will actually see. The photo that you just showed, which was a disturbing photo, right? With a parent sitting there and they're smoking, they're drinking, they're doing these things in front of a child. And though the child is trying to act as if he does not see it, everything that we do in front of our children, they mimic or they see it or they then go out and do something else that is very similar. And so the environment of a child really does affect who they are, because at the end of the day, we as parents, we choose in the beginning of their lives what we will have them around, right? We
Right.
choose, they don't have many options at that point in time. So we're choosing who we have them around, what we allow them to do, what we allow them to surround themselves with. And then eventually they grow up and they make their own decisions. But in the beginning stages of their life, it is critically important that parents understand how critical the environment that they raise their children in is to their children's success or lack thereof.
Okay. Um, how was your environment coming up as a child?
I had a great environment. I grew up in North Philadelphia. I had an awesome environment. We grew up, I I'm in an era where neighborhoods were neighborhoods. So I grew up in an era where all of our neighbors knew each other. We lived on a block where I lived across the street from Missy Lane, who took care of me all my life. Who my mom, went to work, and when I came home and walked home from school, Missy Lane had the key to let me into the house and make sure that I was good until my mom got home from work. We had the same neighbors on the block who actually went to our church as well. We went to vacation Bible school on the corner of the block. We did all of the things that neighborhoods did. So growing up, I'm I don't really like the word single parent a lot of times because I don't necessarily consider my mom a single parent. My mom and dad were not married initially when I was born, but my father was always there. She was never a single parent. She was never doing this on her own. He was there throughout the entire time. And so, though she was a single woman who had a child, it was a very good co-parenting relationship. And I
Mm-hmm.
never took that away from my father. So I really don't consider my mom a single parent. I just consider the fact that they just were not made to be in a relationship.
Right.
So but so my household I lived in, I grew up with living with my mom, but with two of my parents, both of my parents. They both cared very much. I also grew up in a small family. So for our family, we celebrate everything. It's just us. So we celebrate everything. We love on each other really hard. We grew up with I love yous. I grew up with hugs and kisses every day. I grew up before I left out the car or got off the bus. My mom, actually, the funny part is, my mom didn't have a car when we grew up. And so when I went to school, she literally would ride past her job on the bus. We were on SEPTA. She would get on SEPTA with me, ride past her job to take me to school, and then ride back the opposite direction to go to work. And so dropping me off at school on the bus and then ride back the opposite direction. And then at one point, when I was old enough, the bus driver, she would make sure I got off the C bus, and then she would ride back to work. But then the 3 bus, the bus driver knew how to make sure I got to school. And so
Right.
I grew up in a neighborhood where people took care of each other and
Right.
where the village took care of each other. And so it's a very different neighborhood now. We live in places where we don't even know our neighbors. Our environments are very different now. But that environment that I grew up in was very nurturing, loving, even to this day. Um, my mom, my aunt, we say I love you all day long. We say I love you every time we leave each other. So, some families and households come from places where hugging and kissing and loving and showing affection is not a thing. It
Mhm.
was always a thing for us. We loved, we hugged, we kissed, we showed affection. And so those are my environment. My mom, definitely, we went to church. We that was our saving grace. We were in church pretty much almost every day of the week. And my mom, because outside of going to church, my mom was on choirs, and so if I wasn't at church, I was sitting on my mom's lap or by her at choir rehearsal. So
Mhm.
our environment was very much so just a awesome environment. Now I did not come from, at the time, my mom now has a master's degree now, but at the time, my mom didn't have a college education.
Right.
She was a hard worker, but she didn't have a college education. We didn't talk about college in my house. There was no real conversations about college. What I knew about college came from Temple Memorial Baptist Church because we had a scholarship committee at the church that encouraged us to go to school and talked about college, but my household didn't talk about college. And so just because it just wasn't the norm. And so outside of that, I had an awesome childhood. I was in a strict house. My mom You couldn't get off the steps after 10 p.m. And I was like 15 years old. I couldn't get off the steps after 10 p.m. And I always wanted to go around the corner to my girlfriend's house because they was allowed to do other things that I wasn't allowed to do. So it was kind of like,
Okay.
no. And so, nobody wanted to come to my house because my mom was too strict. Nobody came to my house. So we all went to somebody else's house. So but so I grew up in a very, very, I would say, a very much so a high expectation household. Not perfect by any means, but just high expectations of what was expected of me.
Now listen, um, does a child coming up in a well, how can I say this here? Will a bad environment always produce a bad child?
No, not at all. Because I think that there, we laugh sometimes because I don't think that there's a silver bullet for parenting. I don't think that there's a book. I don't think that there's this perfect parent at all. And we laugh sometimes because I'm like, did we mess our children up? Did we give too much? Did we not do the right thing? Like, what part of this is? How far do you go to the left? How far do you go to the right? What do you do? Like those type of things. But then there are other children who I'm like, they didn't have all that we're providing, and they're so resilient. They did not have great environments, yet they're so resilient.
Right.
They are coming from places that I could never probably have survived in, but they're so resilient. And so, in looking at that, I don't believe that just because you grow up in a bad environment means that you're going to come out and the product of that is going to be bad. What I do believe, though, is that trauma is real. So I do believe that when you grow up in bad environments, it may not come out right now. It may not come out in 2 years, but I do believe it's going to come out. And I do believe that whether it comes out in how you act, whether it comes out when you have your own children, whether it comes out in therapy 30 years later, I do
Hmm.
believe that trauma is real. And I believe that something about children is I believe that they are just, if you grow up in an environment that's not ideal, let's say that, not ideal, there's something about somebody who says, you know what, but I'm going to do better, and I'm going to get myself out of this. There are so many people who literally have scraped their way to being so successful, and they did not come from having a silver spoon in their mouth. They did not come from a two-parent household. They did not come from just being able to say, my mom says I love you every day, and all these other, they didn't come from that, and yet they have been resilient. So I don't believe that that dictates that you will definitely turn out bad or anything like that. But I do believe that trauma has to be addressed. And I don't believe that you can take away from children not being loved properly and children not being told how great they are. I do believe that there are consequences to that.
Now, just to piggyback off this question, would you say that the child has a higher probability of being well developed in a good environment versus the opposite?
Yes, much higher probability, much higher probability. I think even when we talk about, like I said earlier today, I don't necessarily consider my mom a single parent, but I do think that even there's a difference between the fact that my mom and dad weren't in the same house. I think it's a difference when your parents are in the same house with you. I think that that changes the environment. It changes the dynamics of the environment. Um, as present and awesome and amazing as my father was, he wasn't there all day, every day, in the same house, and I think that that makes a difference. I think that had he been in my house all day, every day, it would have changed the environment of our house. I think that
Right.
fathers matter, and I think that they should be in their homes. And I think that so those things I think are very critical to how children grow up,
Hmm.
and what they believe about themselves, what they know about themselves, what they believe about their environment. I believe those things are critical, and for that reason, I think that if children are in great have great upbringings, they have a better chance of just being as awesome as they. I think we're all packed with potential, and we have all this greatness that we are already inherently provided by God. But I do believe that those things have to be nurtured, and those things have to be honed, and those things have to be supported, and they have to. You have to tell them how great they are. I believe that children should be affirmed every day of their lives. And when that does not happen and there are missing pieces, it creates children that are not able to self-regulate. They're not able to be their best selves because they are trying to always catch up or trying to always overcompensate for pieces that are not there in their lives.
Right. Um, yeah, the environment definitely does play a important factor in regards to the development of these children. Now, you and your husband both are products of North Philadelphia. Um, I didn't. I'm not going to assume what type of environment he had, but coming up from, you know, just being in North Philly and seeing, the type of outside environment of a home, what did you and your husband do to create a positive environment for your own children?
So my husband, the funny part is my husband came from a amazing home as well. And so there, of course, he has, he didn't grow up with his father, which is a major trauma piece for him. And so it wasn't. I think he was able to get by without it being as, I guess, prevalent in his life for a long time. He was able to hide it for a long time. But as he grew and as he got older and became an adult, he couldn't hide it anymore. And so he couldn't act like it didn't matter anymore because it did matter. And so it definitely, though he had a awesome upbringing and an awesome household, and his grandparents and his mom and all those that poured into him, his aunt, all those that poured into him were amazing to him, right? And so he came from this great place, but it didn't change the fact that he's missing something. It didn't change that.
Right.
So in that, it may not come out right away, but it will come out. And so we came from great places, great spaces. You talk to my husband, he comes from a huge family. Okay. So they had family reunions all the time. They were together all the time. They loving on each other. His aunts, his great aunts, and they were his world. And so because his family, they played cards, they were always together. And so this was just a norm. And so he came from a very, very close knit family. And I think that's why he's the way he is as well. Because I do think that greatness begets greatness. I do think that you you do what you see, and
Right.
so for him, he mimics what he's seen. And but doesn't mean that everything has been perfect, doesn't mean that everything has been great, but it does mean that for the majority of his life he grew up with people who literally loved on him. And so even without maybe the father in the home and things like that, it's the village is real. And when you have a real village, it can compensate for those things that you are missing at those times. So when you go off to college and he didn't have certain people there, he had other people that took the place of that. When he needed to go certain places and grow up as a man, he had other uncles that took care of those things.
Hmm.
Stepped in and was stood in the gap for him.
Right.
And so that's why I believe that in spite of the things that you don't have as a child, there is a village that will step in. And our village is not as strong as it used to be in certain places.
Are
But
you saying your village or just today's
in
society?
today's environment, the village is just not the way it used to be.
Right.
But but it's still there. My village in my household, there's not a day that my mom is not there. For me, my children, and my husband. There's not a day that my aunt is not there for me, my children, and my husband. There's not a day that my grandmother, even after having a stroke. Quick story. Went to her house the other day to see her, and my grandma always cooks. She always makes sure everybody's taken care of. She always gives money to everybody. And we went to the house the other day to take her to the doctor. My husband took her, helped us get her back inside the house because she's in a wheelchair. She can't walk and things like that. And so she calls him back over to her and she says, give me money or whatever. And so he says, what do you need money for? You're not going anywhere. What you need money for? So he digs in his pocket and he pulls out money and gives it to her. So then she calls Jordan back, which is our daughter, and says, come here, Jordan. And Jordan comes back in the house and she gives Jordan the money. My grandmother, even in her current state, still wants to take care of us. And so even if it means somebody else needs to give me a couple dollars so I can give it to the children, that's what I'm gonna do. But she never wants to seem like she's not needed by us. And that's the type of environments we grew up in, where our parents took care of us, our grandparents took care of us, and it's still the same way in my house. I say that I call my aunt Loney my aunt mom, because she's more like a mom than an aunt. She cares more about me and my children and my husband than an aunt it does. And my mom, I just wouldn't know what to do without her. So I think that even in this growing up with my grandmother, it's just they have just been the village like no other. We could not raise our children without the three of them. We just could not have. They have just been there, and so I know that for other families as well. That's the truth as well. That many of us, especially now with working moms and things like, you need a village. You need a village, and so I think that that's important.
Now, can you, for people that may not know exactly what you referring to when you mentioned in the village,
Mhm.
can you give us a little brief history on that and
Mhm.
explain
Mhm.
exactly what this village is?
So the village is those people who are may not be in your family. They may not be your bloodline, but they still make sure that you are covered. They still make sure that you're okay. So when I talked about Missy Lane, who was the person who kept my key in the afternoon until my mom got home from work and made sure I got in the house at after school, that was my village. When I think about my church family, who um, the person who filled out my college application was Monique from my church. My mom didn't fill out my college application because my mom didn't know what to do with that college application. Monique filled out all of my financial aid. She made sure that I was able to get into college. And that's what a village is. The people that may not be your bloodline, but those people who will stand in the gap for your parents to ensure that you don't go without, that you have, that when mom is not there, when dad is not there, that somebody is there to fill in those gaps. And so the village is very important to all children that grow up, because there are going to be times and situations where every child will not have two parents in a home, and every
Right.
child will not have certain things, and the village is very important to the development of that child. But also the village is important because many in the village now are the mentors that mentor your child in the afternoons. The after school programs that they go to is part of your village. The Kappa League, which my son is in, is part of his village. My daughter's gymnastics coach is part of her village. So these people that continue to pour into their lives each and every day, the church that we go to, everybody who continues to support AJ and his music, that's my village. And so it's more than just my mom and my aunt, and it's everybody in this village.
Now, you know, knowing the importance of this village, how you guys came up. How did you and your husband create the environment in your own home?
So we, when we moved into this home, we were just getting married. We didn't have children. And when we got married, I don't think we really talked about, how will we raise our children? What is our real philosophy on parenting? What kind of schools do we want them to go to? We didn't really have those conversations. And then when the children came, it was like, okay, we need to figure out how to be parents now. And what does this mean? And, and so I think one thing you have to realize, we both were administrators. We both been in schools for so long. We both have been working in schools, and we have both been pouring into other people's children for over 20 years now. So one of the things we do know is that we believe strongly in education. Both of our homes we came from believed strongly in education, and we knew that we would push education in our home. So that was one thing. We also knew that we were pushing God in our home. Our children, when they grow up and they get older and they become grown, they can make their decisions. But as for me in this house, they're going to serve God in this house, and we knew that that was going to be what it was. And so there were certain things that we knew were just non-negotiables here. You're going to serve God here. You're going to go to school here, and not just go to school. You're going to be excellent at everything that you do. There are times when our children walk out the house, and I'm like, okay, but what's your last name? And we are Evans. If you're Evans, then you have nothing. You take no shorts in life. You're Evans. You are nothing but great. You're an Evans. Everything you do and everywhere your feet touch, every ground you go in is going to be blessed. Everywhere you go is going to be favored. And so I continuously have always tried to affirm our children. Tell them how great they are, because before the world tells them something different. I believe that affirmations are important. I believe that culture is important. I was very probably to a fault, but I was very clear about what kind of books could come in this house. I was very clear about what kind of dolls could come in this house. I was very clear about what kind of art could be on the walls in this house. I was very clear about what imagery looked like. And I was clear that my children needed to understand how great they were in their blackness and what that looked like. And so there were certain things that were non-negotiables. Doesn't mean that my husband and I have agreed on every aspect of how to raise children, because we don't, and but one thing we know for sure is that there's some things that are just non-negotiable. We both agree that you want to serve God in this house. We both agree that you're not only going to go to school, but you're going to come in here with A's. You're not going to come in here with anything less than this. It's not because, now if you can't, that's something different. But what you will not do is be mediocre. We don't believe in mediocre in this household.
We don't
And
believe in what? I'm sorry. The camera.
mediocre, mediocre.
Mediocre. Okay.
um it drives us crazy. So so we've been very clear with our children. If you can't do something, or you're having a hard time doing it, or you need support in it, you need to speak up, you need to say what that is. But you will not be mediocre, and that everything that you do, you need to do with your best. So we've been very we've been very clear about that. So those things have been some things have been really, really clear in our house. God, education, family has been the three things that are non-negotiables in our home. And then after that, the other thing that's been a non-negotiable, which is a little, is sports and activities. We are really big on, you must be involved, you must be in an activity, and you must be doing something. And part of that is because we believe that it keeps children out of trouble. We believe that it gives them the village that they need. It gives them access and opportunity. It opens doors like nothing else. When you have
Mhm.
your children in these type of programs. And so our children have been in programs since they was probably 1 years old, have been in one program after another program after another program. They've always been in programs. And so quick story. Our daughter, as you know, she is a gymnast, and she's been doing gymnastics all her life. And uh, the last like 3 years she's been asking could she do track, and my husband's like, no, because gymnastics is 5 days a week, track is 5 days a week, you got to pick one or the other, you can't do both. So but she's been in a place of, I really want to try something different. And so we allowed her last year for the first time to really try something else, because she's very athletic, so she loves any kind of sport.
Right.
Let her try something else, and she did awesome in track, and she loved it, and now she'll do it in high school. But then she made her own decision this summer to say, I'm ready to go back to gymnastics now. I want to call Coach Andre back and tell him I'm coming back now, and I want to do A, B, and C. We've been very clear, but one of the things my husband always says is, what you will not do is quit. We don't quit anything. Now, if you now you might not at the end of the season, you might say, you know what, I didn't really like that, and we can deal with that. But you won't quit halfway through. So we're not quitters in this house. We want to see it through, and there's just some tenets that we just stand on in this house in regards to raising our children. Again, doesn't mean that we are perfect or anything, because excellence does not mean perfection. And so we shoot for excellence. We don't shoot for perfection. And again, that doesn't mean that our children don't disappoint. It doesn't mean that our children don't get into to have the same battles that every other child has, because they do. Doesn't mean that in our home that it's not the same battles that every other parent has, because we have the same exact battles that everybody else has. It just means that we stand on certain principles, and we believe that God has favored that.
Now you mentioned something about, like, what did you say? I meant to interject before I forgot.
Hmm.
Um, I can't remember. But so here's a story I had.
Hmm.
So I meet this lady doing Uber. She works at a school. So I'm telling her about the foundation and the current state of youth in the city. So the lady says these children in the city, they need help and guidance. And the one thing that she mentioned about her children was is that if their friends didn't have the same academic achievements as her kids did, they couldn't hang with her children. and I was thrown back by that because that was the first time I heard that. So I posted on Facebook. I used to do this thing called questions or shit. It was called shit at one time,
Mm-hmm.
and I posed that question, and I remember clearly somebody saying that that's unfair to that kid because they don't have anything to do with that. Now, being in this master's program for psychology and learning, the things that I know, I don't agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for my kids, I told them because like I see my kids as an investment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you either gonna put something into it or you're not gonna put something into it. You know what I mean? And I told them, I said, hey, if you getting A's, then your friend need to be getting A's or at least A's and B's.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's going to happen is if you got a friend that's getting C's, then their habits are going to rub off on you. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what I think that's kind of like what happened with me. I used to hang out with my cousin and he would cut school and he'd be like, come on, let's do that. And his bad influence that got my little dumb behind cutting school. And we had my aunt house more at school. So, and it's true, you know, but I don't think, I think that people don't mean no harm in what they saying in regards to it's unfair to that child. Because when you think of a child, you think of innocence. But we need to be focused on more on our kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, don't get me wrong. I've interacted with both of your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the way to present AJ or Jordan that award, and I got a call and they said, hey, something happened to Amaya. Then I'm on the phone with your husband like, Doc, I can't do this today. Something happened with the kid. Now, let's just say that I didn't do that. And I know your husband fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
And he found out, like, something happened to you. Like, even with you. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure y'all would have asked Lisa, but Doc probably would have called me and be like, well, we appreciate what you did for our son, but you should have tended to your own kid. Mm-hmm. AJ wasn't nothing happened to him. You know what I mean? But this is what's happening. We have to invest in our own children. Because if we don't, then who's going to do it?
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. I believe the same thing. I think, one of the things, my husband and I have been in education for over 20 years, and no regrets, but there have been major sacrifices that I've made in this home for other people's children. There have been major sacrifices I've made to be at work and to pour into other people's children, and missing things in my own household and missing things with my own children, because I believe truly in Black and brown children and creating environments that they can thrive in. And so, and I do believe in some regard, you sacrifice for the masses and you want to do what's best for all children. And so I believe that I've sacrificed a lot to do what I do. And to be at the school I'm at and to be doing what I'm doing. I sacrificed a lot of hours, a lot of things. And like I said, if it wasn't for my grandmother cooking for them every night, they might have starved. I don't know, because she cooked every night and she made sure they ate and she did all the things that, so that I could pour into other people's children. But on the back end of that, what I've found out is that God has favored mine even while I was pouring into somebody else's. So I don't regret any of it because I realized that there are so many other children who need so much more. And the same love that I'm giving in this house, somebody else needs it as well. So there are those times when there is a rub, like, okay, do I need to pour more over here or do I need to be over here? What do I need to do? I do think that there's a rub sometimes, but I also think that God honors our sacrifice. But in regards to the friends and things like that, I think that one of the other things that we have resolved in our spirit is that our children are not our friends in this house. So AJ is not my friend. Jordan is not my friend, and they will never be my friend. We are parents, and they are our children. We will love you and have a awesome, positive parent-child relationship. But you will never be my best friend. You will never be my spouse. You will never be that in my head because it blurs the water. It blurs the lines. And so there are times that we have to say things to them that they don't agree with and they don't like. And they may not be okay with the fact that we say that friend is not somebody you need to be with. But the old folk in the church used to say, you'll understand it better by and by. Like, you'll get it later. You don't get it right now, but you will get it. And so I think that we just have to understand that wisdom comes with being a parent. And so there are some things that we know that they just won't get right now. So I do agree with you that we need to be mindful of who our children are around and what that influence looks like, because again, that influence is part of their environment. And so if environment changes or helps develop children, then that influence will help, either in the good or the bad way, help develop them as well. So we have to be very mindful of that. But I also think that you have to also just be clear that all of these children matter. So if I do know that my child has friends that are not doing A, B, and C, how do I make sure that I invest in them just as much as well? How do I make sure that I'm doing something to try to get through to them also?
Mhm.
And without sacrificing to a point where your family or your child is something tragic. But outside of that, I do think it's our responsibility, not because they're our children, but Black folk need to be community minded. And I think that when you're community minded, you understand that it's more than just about you and your four in your house. It's more than just us. And I believe that, again, like I said, I don't take lightly that God has favored us, but I know it's because of how much we pour into other people, how much
Right.
to other people's children, how much we give of ourselves to other people. So when mine is acting up in here, or mine is not doing the right thing in here, I'm trusting God that He's gonna fix this, because I'm doing too much to try to help other children be successful. I can't Mine can't not be, you know what I mean, successful.
Right.
I
I feel you.
continue to do this and do this work no matter what this looks like. I think it's by any means necessary. We have to try to get our children to where they're supposed to get to. So that's my overall thoughts about that part.
Now, what advice would you have for parents in regards to the importance of their child's environment?
Yeah. My advice would be that, like I said before, environment is everything. I think that environment will make or break a child. I think environment will create traumas that you want to try to avoid with your children. So if I had to give any advice, my first piece of advice is that words matter. I believe that as parents, words matter. I believe that words matter. So I believe the way you speak to your children, the way you affirm your children, what you put into them every day, or what you don't put into them every day,
Right.
the difference. I believe that those things matter. I believe that at the end of the day, have family meetings. My children hate our family meetings. Okay, they do not like them. But I make everybody have family meetings. Because I believe that communication is key in a household. I don't believe you can run a household with children just saying, "Oh, my day was fine. Oh, it was okay. Oh, okay, I'm going right to my room." I don't think that that's how you run a household. And I don't
Right.
think it's healthy. And so, though they may not like my family meetings, and every time I say it's time for a family meeting, they go, "Oh my goodness, what do you got to talk about today?" But okay, by the end of the family meeting, everybody's laughing, everybody's joking, everybody's having a good time, because I know more than what you know, that this is for the good of this household. And so I think that I would encourage those things. I would encourage communication with your children, allowing them to really tell you how they feel, and allowing them to develop into the person that they're going to be. But then also ensuring your children are in activities or in sports, have mentors, because it's going to be a time, I think, in every parent's life where you won't be the one to be able to get through to them. It's going to be somebody else that's going to have to pour into them. It's going to be somebody else that won't look like mom and dad that is going to need to say something to them. And then I think the education pieces are just really huge. And I think that if, as a parent, those things have to be spoken about in your house every day. So education in this house is talked about every day. So whether it's just about your homework, whether it's about You better make sure that I see those grades. What did you get on this test today? Or I saw your Canva come through, and I see you got a Latin grade. What was it? What happened on this? Do you understand the geometry? What's going on with the whether it's the asking of questions like that, or whether it's what do you want to do when you grow up, and how do what does that look like for you? And would you like to travel? Like, would you want to travel? Where you want to go? All of those things I think matter. So I think if I had to give advice to any parents about the importance of a child's environment, and my advice would be that environment is not just your household. Environment is
Mhm.
everything. And so that means choosing the right school environment for your child. Finding a place that's going to pour into them and what kind of school is best for them, because every school is not a good fit.
Right.
My son went to a school where it was a great fit for him. Doesn't mean it's a great fit for my daughter. You got to know your children. And so it doesn't mean that anything is wrong with the school. It just means it wasn't a great fit with this one. And so finding those places that are great fits for your children, finding what they love to do, finding that environment that you live in, whether it's the neighborhood, whatever it may be. One of the things that my children have missed is that they didn't grow up in a neighborhood. Where we live is not a neighborhood. This is just a place you live. And nobody knows nobody. We've been here for almost 20 years, and it's probably five people on the block that I know, but nobody talks to nobody. They didn't grow up the way we did, like where everybody was down the street at the fire hydrant. Everybody was going to vacation Bible school together. Everybody had the free lunches at the corner of the block. We did all the things that created a neighborhood. We jumped rope in the middle of the street, had hopscotch. We did all the things that was neighborhood. These kids ain't never seen a neighborhood. And so I just feel like, they're missing some of those core pieces of what it meant to be in a neighborhood. So I would really encourage those things too.
Hey, Doc, I appreciate your time. You really dropped some knowledge in on this. Um, you and your husband are doing an excellent job with not only, AJ and Jordan, but, the children in North Philly and the children in West Philly. And I'm sure you got parents to tell you this every day. We appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all. You know what I mean? Because you really don't have to do this. There's some principals and CEOs of schools that's doing horrible jobs, and I tell Lisa all the time. I say, well, I don't know what they doing, but if I call Dr. Evans, he like on it. So I don't know I don't know what he doing, but it don't never seem like he got a problem in regards to like how he's running the school. Now, I mean, it's different strokes for different folks. You know what I mean? But I appreciate y'all. So
We appreciate you and the work that you're doing in the community, the work you're doing for your organization, coming out to our schools and presenting our teachers with teachers of the month and our children at our schools. Continue to do the work you're doing as well, because it matters so much. So I'm appreciative of you and all that you continue to pour into the community as well.
hey, I appreciate that. Hopefully we can have you back, and it was an honor having you on.
Thank you.
All right, Doc. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye bye. That was Dr. Tamika Evans and her wonderful advice on child environment. We're gonna get right into Black History Moment, but before we do, let's ask a question. So some of y'all might recognize this young man right there. That's Hurst. He's probably around 12 or about 12 or 13, I'd say. That's him right there. Nice, cute kid, innocent. Don't look like he would, harm a hair on anybody's body. Nice haircut. Um, when you got a child that goes from that and goes to something that you can't recognize, then you do want to ask the question of what happened. That's Hurst again currently. It's sad when you have innocent children and due to bad parenting, bad development, bad attachment. You get kids that have the type of record that Mr. Hurst has today. Mr. Hurst is charged with 4 counts of murder, along with 36 other charges in regards to those murders. I can't understand how that innocent kid that I just showed you 5 minutes ago turned into this person right here. The kid that I showed you 5 minutes ago, he might not have had a great expression on his face, but he was content. That picture that I just showed you, Mr. Hurst, currently, he looks lost. Somebody failed him. I can't say it was his parents. I don't know if it was environment, but all that stuff plays a factor. Parenting, environment, attachment, it all plays a factor. You know, I could show more pictures of AJ and Jordan. That's not really the whole key here. The whole key here is please invest in your children. That's it. I shouldn't care about people's kids more than their parents should. Dr. Alfonso Evans shouldn't care more about their kids more than the parents do. His wife should. Any other principal out there shouldn't. All these teachers should. The mentors, the coaches. These are your kids. You're not sending kids to school like it's vacation Bible study, where they taking care of them and making sure. Like, no, the behavior of these kids are up to you. So, we're about to do Black History moment with Ambrielle Parker. So we about to bring her on now and see what she got for us here.
Hi.
Hold on for 1 second. All right. Hey, Miss Parker.
Hi.
All right. So what? No.
Okay, so today I'm talking about the antelope ship which arrived in Savannah. Okay, so on June 29th, 1820, 281 Africans aboard the Antelope were brought to Savannah by the U.S. Treasury. The average age of the captives was about 14, and more than 40% were between the ages of 5 and 10 years old. Rather than being given
Ambrielle, we can't hear you. All right, you got to repeat all that. I'm sorry.
Okay. From the beginning? Okay. On June 29th, 1820, 281 Africans aboard the Antelope were brought to Savannah by the U.S. Treasury. The average age of the captives was about 14, and more than 40% were between the ages of 5 and 10 years old. Rather than being given their immediate freedom, as they stated they should be, the Africans were imprisoned for 7 years while a legal and political battle ensued. The lawyers and public officials prospered from the case. For example, while in prison, the U.S. Marshals in Savannah forced the strongest of them to labor on his plantation, while at the same time he built the federal government for the care of the captives. Of the Africans, 120 died, 2 are accounted for. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that 39 be sold into slavery to raise funds to pay for Spain and Portugal, and 120 be sent to Liberia to fund New Georgia.
All right. During this research, how did you feel about what happened to those individuals?
Um, I felt like that was kind of disappointing because like I wouldn't think that the government would be doing this to people, but I didn't know that even the government enslaved people. I thought that it was just regular, regular people, and I didn't know it was like actually like political people who are like who run the office and stuff like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, everybody is not of good nature or good character. Maybe they came from a bad environment. It's so funny that that was the history lesson that you had for today, because that kind of does deal with environment. No, it deals with the environment of slavery, and then how these people were treated when they was brought from their home over to America. So I appreciate you for your Black History
He
moment.
did tell me mine.
Um, Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye bye. So that was Miss Ambrielle Parker with a moment in Black history. Um, some other news we got here. Let's see here. So we had to cancel our youth conference. Don't worry, we're going to do the conference next year, and we will be planning for some activities this year as well. We just wanted this to be as productive and special for the youth and the community as possible. So I didn't feel as though that we were at that point. So the organization decided to put it on hold until next year. So hopefully we can have the same speakers. If you can hear me, Doc, we want you. So hopefully we can have the same people on there. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. On the Thursdays that we do come on, and in partaking in the wisdom that we putting out to the community. But please be aware, like Dr. Evans said, that community is everything. And I do remember what she said. She said she pays attention to the things that come into her house. She was saying books, dolls, movies. She didn't say that, but I'm sure she was on that too. All that plays a part. Excuse me. You can't have any type of book in your house that your child will read. So for those that like Zane and whatever other adult novels you may have out there, it's probably just best that you don't bring them in the house, because you are your child's example. Now, if you want to read those, then find somewhere else to bring them in. I remember my spiritual father was telling me, Deacon Lagan, you are your child's example, and you can't tell them something that you're not practicing. So I make that a rule that whatever I'm telling these kids is something that I'm doing. You know what I mean? As far as the friends too, you got to be careful who your child's friends is. That's part of the environment. Even your friends, you bring your friends over and they smoking and drinking, and that's not a good sign for that. And I'm not saying that everybody friends does that. You might have a friend that cuss or like whatever. I mean, they might talk loud, or you got to be very careful about the environment that you're setting for your child. So I want to thank you guys for checking us out again. I truly love you guys, and you guys have a wonderful evening, and God bless. And